I'm a Medium, Ask Me How was not filmed in front of a live studio audience. We best friends, but we love talking about dead people. We're gonna laugh and we'll cry. Well, Dana's gonna cry a little bit.
We got love bombs all over the place. And let's not act like Matt isn't gonna cry a little bit. But we're also gonna cuss. So if that doesn't resonate, turn the fuck around.
Yeah, we're gonna drop some fuck bombs.
But we also want to share our experiences and knowledge about mediumship.
So sit down, get comfortable, and remember,
you are the light of 100,000 suns. You are the light.
And enjoy.
I'm a medium, so ask me how.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Fancy meeting you here.
I know, it's like we do this every week.
Same time, same station.
Same medium time, same medium station, Dana Willey.
You're looking like a small medium.
I am getting to a small medium. I'm like hitting the gym like 6 days a week. I'm like wanting to get into that like mode of just taking care of myself. What about you?
I'm working on it. I don't get there 6 days a week, but I'm on a spin bike, and I'm like, go. See, here's a fun inside joke. I mean, you did post about it on TikTok, which I just, I appreciated so much. But I stay on a spin bike now for my cardio because I cannot be trusted on a treadmill.
Stop right now. You got to tell the viewers what happened.
Okay, so here's the dangers of working out as a medium. I find, even as weightlifting or whatever, that I fall into a little bit of a meditative state when I'm working out, especially like spin class, because they just like pump the music and I close my eyes and I'm like, yeah. And I'll like kind of fall into a meditative state. Well, I decided, like I missed spin class one day and I was like, okay, well, I'll just hop on a treadmill. And I haven't like run in a long time and my cardio has been building up and it's been really good. And I was like, I'm going to run a full mile and I was feeling good. Well, I fell into that meditative state. And falling being the key word here, I then kind of closed my eyes for a half second, falling into that meditative state, and then flew off the treadmill in the middle of the gym.
But the funny part about that whole story wasn't the fact that you fell. I felt bad. It was the gift that you sent after you fell of the lady being jetted completely off the treadmill and backward. That was really funny because then you really set like a vision in my head of what it looked like, and it was probably nothing like that.
It felt like that in my head, though. It felt like that in my head. And thankfully, I caught myself on my feet. But I looked around and everybody was staring at me and went, oh no. So I don't run on the treadmill anymore. I safely run on a stationary or do my cardio on a stationary bike where I can't fall down.
But there's a couple things about that you should never laugh at somebody else's misery. Like, I just need to clarify that because 2 days later I dropped a 45-pound dumbbell on my chest.
That's what we call karma, friends. Karma.
Yeah, so that was karma. And then you sent me a picture of you in the spin class the other day, and it was like this red lighted room. It looked like a sex dungeon. I was like, I'm not going to spin class.
Listen.
I don't want to say may I have another during this whole entire thing.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
No. Well, I'm glad we've kind of checked in on our health because it's always good to check in on like yourself physically as a medium as well. Because I mean, if you look at the work that we do, we're always sitting down.
Yeah.
Like we're never actually out doing active things during a mediumship reading. And so that means that you get a little soft.
You get a little soft and you have to make sure that we are taking care of our physical body. And we preach this all the time and drinking our water and all of that. And we've already talked about a grounded episode, so you guys can listen back to that episode again. But, we try to walk the walk or fall off the treadmill.
You stumble the walk.
Stumble the walk. You know.
I do have the horrible segue.
I was going to say, how are you going to segue off of that?
But I think physical
But then
health
I thought
is
about
good.
the segue. Being on a segue.
Let's not talk about that segue because that didn't turn out well for its creator. So let's just not. I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm laughing because it's really weird. But taking care of the physical body is a good thing. But what about the emotional body? And I think that's kind of like the emotional mind. And I think during like a mediumship development, or even like if you're a seasoned medium, like your mental health is so important.
Yes.
But specifically to imposter syndrome and ego.
Oh, whew. Whew. You just lit a fire under me. This has been.
I lit the Palo Santo.
You lit that Palo Santo underneath me. Oh my gosh. Imposter syndrome has been like my Achilles heel in my mediumship development. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad that we're having this conversation, Matt, because I think it's the one thing nobody talks about.
No, but here's the deal. If you look at other mediums, and like especially the seasoned ones that are on like TV, you never see them stumble. Because editing is such a beautiful thing, so it always makes them look good. And that's the purpose of their show, is to make them look good, right? But we never get to see a medium stumble. And if we do, it's usually by like, in the media, it's usually by like Dateline being like, let's interview 6 mediums and see if they work. And then they purposely film them stumbling. Mm-hmm. So it creates this like alternative truth,
right?
Alternative fact that it works because we're human. Mm-hmm. And I don't think people realize that as mediums, we're human and we are allowed to make mistakes. We are allowed not to be accurate. Even as a psychic, we are allowed to be like, you know, that was, I don't know what the fuck happened during that reading.
I was not connected during that at all. Well,
but
and
it
not
will
to
beat you up.
Yeah, and not to mention that, you know, whenever we go out in public and tell anybody new what we do, there's this, half the time when you tell somebody like this, there's this prove it mentality. Like, oh yeah, right, prove it. And so we feel on the defense all of the time. Like we have to dance monkey dance, prove it. Like, oh yeah, what am I thinking? Oh yeah, tell me my grandma's name. You know, I can't tell you how many times somebody's like, I'll give you $1,000 if you can tell me my dad's name. Like, oh my God, leave me alone. Leave me alone.
I always go with a Richard. Because when you shorten it. Your dad was a Richard.
Yeah, just like you. No, but I think, you know, we're always on the defensive because I think everybody is like out to prove that we're faking it or that we're, you know, so we're always on this defensive kind of thing with the work that we do. So I think that, you know, it's just kind of this built-in thing. And then, you know, we also kind of come into all of this with how we were raised and how a lot of this is like kind of that little child that was told like you're not good enough, or because that was some of the stuff for me of like I'm a perfectionist. So when I wasn't getting stuff 100%, I was like, well, then I must be a fraud. I must be horrible.
Yeah. So you had the you perfectionist parent. I had the reverse. You're not good enough parent. Or the parent that didn't care enough. So I put myself in a corner that I've got to be the best to prove to them that I'm that validation that I need, right? I need that validation that I know that you see and acknowledge me. So it can go in both ways. Like there is no one path to really good imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, and one of my favorite movies always said, like, what would we do without our childhood trauma?
Yeah.
Right? And I think with mediumship, a lot of people that I've noticed that are mediums have really difficult childhoods, whether it's trauma, abuse, or, you know, just really strict, super hard parents. It's a gamut. But then it creates this inner voice in your head that inner saboteur that's always like, you ain't good enough, you're not doing this. Like, I walked away from readings being like, oh my God, I just took advantage of somebody. I feel like I've just now told them all this information that's not true. I feel like I just made that entire thing up. I'll never be good enough. And then I had to like live in it. And that's such a horrible feeling. Mm-hmm. And it's very, 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 very common. Mm-hmm. Like super common.
It is so common. And again, it's something that nobody talks about. Nobody talks about it.
Nope.
And I love, there was you, and I have to thank you, Matt. You gave me the advice of naming that voice. Give that voice a name. Who is that person in your head saying those things? And we gave mine a fictional character name. But it was nice to like give that voice in my head a name. So I could just say, shut up, Carole, leave me alone.
Yeah, because when you give it a persona, it's easier to control, right? So you're removing the accountability off yourself and putting it onto something else, which is, I don't know if that's healthy or not, but it's a way to control that and being like, you're part of Linda. We need to put Linda in the closet because Linda don't have time for this right now. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't have time for Linda. And I think when you start to believe that entity, like name, person, Linda, inner saboteur, you're giving it power. Mm-hmm. And you're fueling it. And then Linda is eventually going to set up shop in your mind and hold you back from a lot of good things in life. Like how many things, and Linda could also be fear, right? Linda's multifaceted. She's a multifaceted working girl. But how many things in our lives have we held back from doing things that we would really genuinely want to do because our inner saboteur or inner voice said, you're going to fail at that. You're going to look like a fool. You're not going to be good at it. Yeah. How many times in your life has that held you back, Dana?
Countless. There's too many. Too many.
And I think living in that place of enjoying mistakes will also help soften that a little bit, because we never want to look like a fool in front of people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the hardest part about being a medium, is that you have to be fucking vulnerable in front of strangers. And I can tell you now, like now that I've done this work for a really long time, I am more comfortable reading in front of strangers, mediumship, than I actually am singing in front of people.
Absolutely.
Isn't that weird? Mm-hmm. Like Linda's now shifted to singing and I'm completely okay with that. But like, it's just, you're giving your heart and you're being vulnerable, and you've got to be vulnerable to be a medium. You have to be vulnerable to be a medium. And I don't care what anybody else says. If you're reading in front of thousands or hundreds of people on TikTok, or in front of a stage doing platform demonstration, you're my fucking hero.
Or even if you are being vulnerable enough to do a one-on-one reading, it's that vulnerability that is essential for doing mediumship work. And another word for vulnerability is surrender. We have to surrender and trust as mediums. And our imposter syndrome really gets in the way of us being able to fully surrender and trust into what we are getting. One of the things that we are constantly asked as development mentors and teachers is, how do I surrender? How do I trust the information? That inner saboteur, that imposter syndrome really gets in the way. And I have to say again, the imposter syndrome being my Achilles heel, that was the thing that got in the way of me being able to fully surrender and being vulnerable as a medium, is not caring. Just not caring if I fall, if I make a mistake, and I'm just going to be here. I'm going to be the vessel, and if I fall on my face, I fall on my face. But I'm just going to be open, and I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do the thing. I have a sticky note on my computer, and if you know me, I love a good sticky note affirmation where I work. But I always say, Spirit, I know you are with me, because I love just knowing that if I show up, all I have to do is show up. and be there and be the vessel and be open, and spirit will be there and be available. And as I say this, God, I'm get like spirit's like, yes, tell the people. It's funny when we're delivering the right message, it's like you get the all the feels. But it's really being just open and saying like, I trust that if I'm open and I've come and done the work, that you're going to be there when I need you.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. I think going into every single reading, it's a different player and it's a different stage, and you can't have expectation when you go into a mediumship reading that they're all going to be alike, because they are really truly different. It's kind of like, I know we've talked about this earlier, it's like getting a different card every single time and having to figure out where the turn signal was. But it is really like you have an idea, but it's not going to go in the way that you expect. So like walking into a mediumship reading with expectation is just like going in with imposter syndrome, because you want to go in there and feel safe that you know what you're doing. And I think true surrender truly lies into being vulnerable, but it's also having no expectation of an outcome, right? Letting it just flow the way it needs to flow, and just being okay with like falling on your face and making mistakes. I encourage you to make so many mistakes, because it's like that's how your brain is going to process of surrendering, of being like, well, okay, well, if I go in looking like a fool and the worst thing happens, well, what's left on that, right? Yeah. So if I say something that's not going to resonate, and I think that's where a lot of new mediums like really hold back, is because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they hold on to evidence to interpret it of what's important to them, because if they say what actually came through the way it was designed, it would hit. But they're like, okay, well, why is this coming in and why is this important? So then they're like afraid to say it because they don't want to look like a jackass in front of the person. But we don't know what evidence is important for that other person. Why are you interpreting? That's not part of psychism. Yeah. Right? That's a part of like your human ego or your imposter syndrome, being like, don't look like a fool. So I had to
well, thank you for singing. For a second. Now, I mean, you sang. Look at that. Yeah. You know, the other thing that imposter syndrome will pop up is when we do comparison, right? Because we look at, especially when you're a developing medium, and even if, again, you're a seasoned medium, we watch other people read. And I might be like, I cannot get evidence like Matthew Tao does. Like, look at how well he gets evidence. And I am a failure of a medium if I can't get evidence like Matthew Tao, because we're comparing ourselves. And that is, number one, that's a dangerous road to go on. Yep. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like I always talk about having your special spice, and that what you bring to the table is so important. You don't have to read like anybody else. You are given these abilities for a reason, to read in your own special and amazing way. You can take something from another reader and say, like, I really like the way Matthew delivers evidence. And you can put it on a wish list of like, I would like to pull through evidence like Matthew, but I like how I do this. And I can take a little of what Matthew does, and I can take a little of what Dana does, and I can take a little of what John Edward does, and I can take a little of this, and I can take a little of what I do, and I can make it my own and offer a unique and beautiful offering. But when I say that I'm not good enough because I can't do it like somebody else, that's that imposter syndrome rearing its ugly head.
Well, and I think we got to remember, there's different journeys, and people have put in work to get where they are. And I think when we compare ourselves to somebody and not knowing their journey or where they're at as far as their unfoldment process or how much they've studied and the time that they put in there, you're discrediting their work as well. Yeah. Right? Because you're being like, well, I'll never get there. Well, trust me, that person worked their ass off to get there. It was not easy. Mediumship is not an easy thing as much as it should be. It's like the easiest thing that your body knows how to do. Yeah. Your soul.
It's simple, but not easy, I would say.
We overthink it, right? And so I think it's just giving yourself a little grace to be like, that's possible. That is possible. And anytime you look at a medium that you are epically blown away by, just know that you can do that. You just need to put the work in to go do it and challenge yourself to go do it. And I think that's where a lot of people get freaked out, because they don't want to look like an asshole in a development circle for trying something new. Like, get out there and just be like, hey, I'm going to just try complete names today. Any name that I'm going to get in my development right here, right now, I'm just going to say.
Yep.
And we had a friend on a live, and I'm going to say this because this was fucking funny. She was like, and if you don't think it doesn't work, she was like, right before the live, we were on the phone with her, and she was like, I'm going to get names today. And we're like, okay, cool, sweet. And she had her headphones off. And she's reading for like 300 people. And then she's like saying the name. She's like, I'm just going to use this name because I think it was 2 C's, but it was just like Christopher Cross. And the person was like, that's the first and last name.
And she had no idea. And she just kept going.
And she kept saying names, but she had nailed the name, right? And then she had gone for a second name and she didn't get it. And she's like, I thought I was on a roll. I'm like, you got first and last. But there's epic things that mediums can do that even like as educators of mediumship, we see our students do, where I'm like, holy shit. Because somebody got a full fucking telephone number in a development. I'm like, look, I do yellow pages as psychics, but that is true yellow pages as psychics.
That's next level.
But that is like what's possible. So just know that if that person could get a phone number and a first name, last name, you can do anything you can set your mind to. You just have to surrender to being a fool.
Yeah.
You got to surrender to being cool with making mistakes and picking yourself back up when you fail. Yeah. And I think that's also a disconnect with developing mediums, is when they fail, they curl up in a ball and they're like, I don't want to do it anymore. And it can shy people away from their development by failing.
Yep.
I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let you talk because I need to formulate my words because I get very frustrated by this.
Well, you gotta. It's not how many times you fall down; it's how many times you get up, and you gotta get back up. We really, Matthew and I, when we run our development circle, we really celebrate the word no, because learning how to get up after a no and how to not let the no make you dip so much, because you're gonna get no's in mediumship. You just are, and that's part of the journey. But you really have to navigate that and not let it just floor you. One of the other things in comparison that always come up is, and this was something for me because I really stepped into this later in life, even though we shared our stories in our first episode. This was something that I've had my whole life, but it wasn't until 2017 that I was like, okay, now it's time for me to actually step fully into this and develop and do all of this. A big thing for me was like, I'm too old to start this. Yeah. I'm too old to begin development. And I get this question all of the time where people are like, is it too late for me to start? Is it this? Is it that? Because people will tout, well, I've been doing this for X amount of years, and good, years of experience is always amazing, but it's not always about how long you've been doing something. It's your dedication to the craft, if you will, of what you are developing and wanting to do. And I truly believe in divine timing. Like, it was not time for me to step into this until 2017. I think that, again, not comparing yourself to somebody else and saying, well, because I didn't start this at the age of 15 or at the age of 4, then I'm invalid and I've lost time and I shouldn't start. I think that does a great disservice to your journey. Comparing yourself in any way and saying, well, I've only been doing this for X amount of years. It doesn't matter. You're here now. Do it now. If you're driven and you're pulled to doing the work now, do it now.
Let me get my chapstick. And I think I'm going to put this on because I'm going to get spicy for a second. So,
that's not chapstick.
Momento.
Let's not.
Well,
that's
this
not
is
lip.
the lip plumper.
Okay.
Do you want some?
I don't think our little
we
trick
can
will
share
work
on
here. Yeah, here, I'll put mine on.
We can share on a podcast. Here's the deal. Your imposter syndrome can also show up in a form of an egoic response. And so what I find in an observation of being a newer medium, I'm a newer medium. I'm not naturally born. I'm naturally born, but I just, like you, I ended up developing later in life. What I find is that people that have the most experience often compare the opposite way of being like, I'm the best. Nobody else can read just as much as I can. I've been doing this for 20 years. Nobody can touch me. That's insecurity. That is your imposter syndrome trying to protect you from something that you feel as a threat. Mm-hmm. It does not matter how long you've been doing this for. My first question, are you doing it well? Mm-hmm. Are you constantly developing yourself? Are you celebrating mediumship as a whole? Because when mediumship is talked about, we're all celebrated.
Yes.
Every single one of us is included. And you may be doing it for a really long time, but somebody that's coming in could have a fresh perspective on how to explain things.
Yeah.
And that might actually click and you might learn something. Mm-hmm. So I think no matter where you are in your journey, being open-minded and not setting expectations, because that is all a lot about like expectations of like, you should come to me only because I've been doing it for X amount of years. And you might actually learn something from somebody that just has been doing it for a little while, because they might have a different perspective that you are like, hey, might be stuck on something. I think when we do something for a really long time, we also put ourselves in a closet of being like, this is how it works, right? And we don't know or realize that there's a limitless potential on everything. Mm-hmm. And you're always growing. You are always developing until you're on the other side. Until you're on the other side, you're still developing.
Yeah.
Always.
Matthew, I learn stuff from our students all the time. Mm-hmm. I learn stuff from our students all the time. And I think that we have to always be in progress. But, you know, I think boiling it down, imposter syndrome, let's get to the ego. Because the ego, I always want to make sure that we don't demonize the ego, because everybody's like demonizes like the word ego. The ego is not a bad thing. The ego is part of being human and is an important part of your humanistic, I'm just making up words. It's an important part of you being human. But being aware of our ego as mediums is essential. An overactive ego, too big of an ego, is not a good thing as a medium. And an underactive ego is not a good thing as a medium. And when we talk about imposter syndrome, we're talking about an underactive ego. And what you were just talking about, Matt, is an underactive ego playing itself out, like overreacting to make itself feel bigger. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be aware of like how that imposter syndrome could play itself out. Sometimes it's making ourselves small, but sometimes it's making ourselves feel bigger and more important than we are.
Also, it also could be owning other people's shit. Own your own shit. If somebody says you're a horrible medium, that says a lot more about them than it does about you. Mm-hmm. Okay? So, like, know who you are. Know that every single person that's listening to this podcast, whether you are a practicing medium or not, is a medium. We all can communicate with spirit, and we all have different gifts. And I think when people go into lives and they expect, like, well, what are my gifts? You're a human, and that is a beautiful gift. That right there. You're at Earth School, you're learning, and you're coming into a spiritual awakening. If you have an inquiry about developing as a medium, just know you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Be gentle on yourself, but don't listen to other people. Go by your own experience. Go by your own drive to want to do this. Ask yourself continuously why you're doing this. That will help check your ego. Mm-hmm. That will be like, and you kind of said something earlier, and I just tangented it. I'm sorry, but you kind of said something about like the ego itself. It's necessary for us to survive. Mm-hmm. It is the voice that says, "Is this drinkable water? Is the sun going to come up tomorrow? Am I going to have food? What do I need to do to live the next moment? What do I need to duplicate myself or have children and keep my DNA surviving?" It's an instinct that is instilled in us to make sure that we are safe. It just has a way to fluctuate depending on the scenario, or our insecurities to just make us feel safe. It is necessary to live in earth to have one. So let's not demonize it, but it's a healthy ego is good. And that is keeping it centered. Because I always like to compare the ego as like a pendulum, that it will swing back and forth. But a healthy ego is recognizing when it's gone too low or too high and trying to keep it centered. Right? Trying to realize that, hey, I need to reel this back, whether it's through self-care or through finding out why something's bothering you. Right? So a lot of the time when we have a reaction to something, there's a reason why our ego is being like, I'm having this reaction. Digging deep into it in what we call shadow work in the biz. We call it shadow work, but it could just be therapy. Right? Why am I having this reaction? What is it about this that is triggering me? How can I deal with this? Or if you're overinflated, why am I feeling this peak? And like, why do I feel I need to humble myself a little bit more? So let me go back to my journey of like how far I've gotten and humble myself into my journey.
Yeah. Where did this voice, Linda, come from? Where did this voice come from? Where did this inner saboteur come from? When was the first time I heard this voice? Was it in school? Was it something? Was it from my first marriage? What is it? Where and journaling and that this process of self-discovery, because here's the thing about being a medium. Everybody, we talk about the vulnerability and reading in front of people and doing all of this and whatever. That's all secondary to really the process of self-discovery that happens to us as developing mediums, because as developing mediums, we are personally developing as part of this process. And I know that we started this podcast off as like a little check-in with Matt and Dana of like, what's going on in your life? And we're both working out and whatever. But we are personally working on our personal development, right, Matt? Like we are checking in with our body. We're keeping our bodies healthy. We're keeping our minds healthy. And it's important to do that as part of being a healthy and well-rounded medium. So in checking in when this imposter syndrome shows up, or when you are feeling like I'm the best medium that's ever walked the planet, of checking in when that pendulum is swinging too far out of center. What is happening around my life? What is the awareness that I need to go into? Do I need to do a little of the shadow work? Do I need to talk to a therapist? Do I need to meditate and journal? Do I need to take a break from mediumship for a while and do a little bit of self-discovery and self-work that I can step forward into this work and be a little bit so that I can be a better medium? I think that is the bigger focus and what needs to happen, because it's always okay to take a break from mediumship.
I agree. It never goes away. It never goes away. And I think another thing to help solve that would be is action. I think when we sit in our head a lot and we contemplate, so I'm going to just use it, I don't know, this might be a bad example, but like, let's say our gym, let's bring it full circle, right? We're going to the gym. I did it because I didn't like the way I looked in my clothes. I didn't like the way it fit in my clothes. And I think a lot of people that have low ego or imposter syndrome would just go inward, not want to do anything, eat the ice cream, feel better, self-soothe, not deal with the core action of what's bothering them. Action. You've got to take the action to get better, or to check yourself, or humble. Like, you don't just sit and think about it. Journal it, yes. Journaling is very healthy. Talk about it with a therapist. But the action of the way that you want to live your life, whether it's with mediumship, is action. What steps can you take? Getting it back into mediumship. If you are looking at somebody else in comparison and you're like, well, I never get names. Well, have you ever tried? Have you put yourself in action in that moment to surrender, to get that information? And if you have, did you give up? You gotta keep going. You gotta take action. You gotta put yourself into development circles. You've gotta put yourself into practice readings. You've gotta do all this stuff to improve yourself, and that's through action. So if you are listening to your little voice inside your head telling you that you are either too great or too little, I want you to do the opposite of what it's telling you to do. If it says that you're not good enough, you are more than good enough. You are perfect. I had to get nice and close to that mic for that. You are perfect. You are perfectly perfect, and I love every single one of you.
You just blew out everybody's ears, but that's okay.
You're welcome.
So
Can I get an amen?
Amen. But I do, one thing that happens too, and I want to talk about this, that something that can like spur on imposter syndrome in a more seasoned medium. Have you noticed in your development, because we're always developing, right, Matt? That all of a sudden you think you got this whole mediumship thing figured out. You're going along, everything's normal. And then something changes. And all of a sudden the wheels come off, and all of a sudden I don't get this piece of information like I used to. And I'm not feeling things the way that I used to, or all of a sudden I'm not seeing things the way that I used to. And you feel broken.
Oh, no. You know that Adele song that's like, hello?
Yeah.
That's what it's like sometimes. Because you're like doing your reading, but you got to remember that Spirit never wants you to rely on your strengths. They want you well fucking rounded. They want you using all firing on all cylinders. They want you using every clair that's possible that you have. Or if they're about to introduce something new to you, they will shut off what you're relying on to get you to grow that other thing. And I can tell you, I'm being vulnerable. They've taken away a lot of stuff that I've been like, oh my God, I love that. And sometimes it's just kind of like right now they're working on my clair cognizance, where it's like the knowing, my clear knowing. And so they've taken away my clairsentience a little bit. Like I still have it, but it's a little bit. It's not as strong as it used to be because they want me to delve into my psychism a little bit more. I know what they're trying to do. Thank you so much, Spirit. You're so nice. But they're trying to take it away so I don't rely on it. So that way when my claircognizance comes on, I can just give information and trust that it's right. Mm-hmm. But it's freaky. It feels like you have this beautiful house and then somebody just came away and ripped out all the furniture in the inside and you just have the beautiful house, but you can't sit down in the house because you're like, it doesn't feel complete. And that's what it's like when they take a clair away. Like you feel like you've been abandoned a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, and then you feel broken. Mm-hmm. And then you go into this tailspin of being like, I'm not a medium anymore. What about for you?
Oh my God, it happens all the time. I mean, and it's usually when we get real comfy and cozy. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're in a reading and you go, hello, is this thing on? Like, what are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? And, you know, I share this with you all just because we're two mediums. It happens. Again, I think what Matt and I hope to do in this podcast is talk about some of the things that nobody else is talking about and normalize the experience of unfoldment. Because really what is happening is your spirit team, your guides and everybody are working to unfold you and making you a stronger medium. They're making you rely on your other clairs. They're not letting you be lazy in your developing and your unfoldment. So they take things away. It's uncomfortable. It's like, what's going on? And you kind of feel like, am I broken? Is whatever, but it's usually right before a growth spurt. And then all of a sudden you just like, new achievement unlocked, you know, it's like
level up.
You know, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you start doing a reading and you're like, oh, dope, that is cool, what you just unlocked for me. So, you know, just having some patience and understanding of like, again, knowing that being a medium is challenging and being comfortable in the uncomfortability of being a medium is really important. And knowing that it doesn't mean that you're broken. It doesn't mean that you're not a medium anymore, but that these unfoldment periods where they kind of take things away for a little bit is completely normal.
Yeah. And it's going to run its course. It'll come back. You just got to wait until you level up a little bit. Or you learn the lesson that you're supposed to learn. Stop relying on that clairaudience, right? Of just being like, hey, there's other things possible. And as you were speaking, I swear, like I was like, what clair do I not want?
Yeah.
And I was like, taste and smell. I want clear COVID. I didn't want to taste and smell. But then I'm thinking to myself, you know, we always say don't limit a limitless potential, but spirit will eventually bring that in for me. And I'm like, well, how would that be useful? Well, it's evidence.
Oh,
but
I think it's so useful. I got the other day, like they made me taste plain waffles, like Eggo waffles, and I could taste them in my mouth. And they would not, they didn't show it to me. They made me taste plain Eggo waffles.
Yeah, I don't have that yet, but I'm cool. I'm cool with it. I mean, it's not something that I would be like, it's on my Amazon wish list of Claire's. But then you don't realize that every Claire has a specific reason of why it is useful. So for me, I want to do a lot of like missing persons and unsolved cases. And it would be very helpful if I could taste dirt. Mm-hmm. Or if I could smell like a musty attic, where I can be like, I know that smell. This is the smell. This is the taste. All the Clairs will have a reason of why they're being developed in your journey. You just need to ask for them and at least try. I don't know how I'm going to try to smell.
I think you just you open the door and you say, I'm willing.
Right.
I'm
cool.
I have Claire gustance and Claire aliens, which is the fancy way of saying Claire tasting and Claire smelling.
I'm just sorry saying clear smell and clear taste.
Yeah. But you just open up the door and you're like, I'm open for it. You know, one of the things that I would also just encourage everybody to do in these moments is go into a practice circle or development circle and stretch when you are in these moments of like unfoldment. Yeah. That was one thing that was, for me, I always talk about like I always call myself a weird medium because I wasn't strong in clairvoyance, and like every medium's like, I see this, and I was like, and for me, I always thought, you know, when talk about imposter syndrome, that was one of the things that made me question whether I was a medium for so long, because everybody else was talking about all these vivid visions that they were getting. I never got those for the longest time. And I was like, well, I must not be a medium because I can't see I'm not getting these visions. They're talking to me and I feel things and I know things, but I'm not getting these visions like everybody else. What I ended up doing was I would just go into these development circles and I would sit there and I would go, the only Claire that you guys can use is clairvoyance. The only information that I'm going to pull through is if it's coming through and I can see it. And I just stretched, and it was uncomfortable because it took longer for the information to come through. And it's frustrating because it feels like it's like a minute between pieces of information coming in, but it's not that long. But it was through that stretching that I got stronger in my clairvoyance. And, you know, am I as strong of a clairvoyant reader as Matthew? No. But I get visuals all the time now. So it's just working through and stretching and practicing and saying, this is something that I want to work with.
Also, I think that it's just being okay with just where you're at.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I'm developing. I'm a developing medium. I can tell you what my big I don't think I'm a medium was. Do you want to know what it was? When and it's part of comparison. It's when people would be like, my guides just said this. My guides said this, and I had dreams about my guides because I don't communicate with my guides as much. And I was like, I think I'm broken. And then also, like, when I was watching, like, other mediums being like, they just said that you need to mow your lawn and that, like, you need to pay your bills. And then they just said to me that they like little Corey and they're like, Teresa, like, little Corey just loves to go to the park. Spirit doesn't communicate that with me. And I was like, I think I'm broken because Spirit does not communicate in paragraphs and sentences. And I think when we make it look like it's a two-way engagement, it's almost misleading a little bit, right? Because I think it could be some mediums that are in full surrender and they just trust that it's going to be like a bouncing back and forth type ping pong situation, which cool, I'm not going to limit it. But they bounce around from topic to topic because they want to talk about the most important things in the small amount of time. So it doesn't have a flow. And I can remember reaching out to my mentor being like, I'm not, and she's like, you're normal. It doesn't communicate with me either. But also going to development circles will make you feel normal. And I think surrounding yourself with people that can relate to you on such a soul level and understand what you're going through at all parts of your journey is the most beneficial thing that can help your imposter syndrome ever. I am so thankful for this bitch on my right. And I'm talking about the macrame skull. But I'm so thankful for you because there's a lot of things in my development that I'm just kind of being like, I can go to you because you've been through that. I can go to my other friends for other things to be like, are you experiencing this? Like, how are you? Like, how did you handle that? How did you navigate it? And it's just hearing other mediums' journeys and stories that makes you even better.
Yeah.
Because we all raise each other up.
Absolutely.
There's always raising up. Because I can tell you one thing, and this is going to be real shady. I'm going to be a real shady lady right now. There's a lot of competition. And a lot of backstabbing and a lot of there's not enough spirits in the world to go around for every single medium. So I've got to try to get ahead. And that's really the imposter syndrome coming up being like, I'm never going to get work again. There's no competition. We raise each other up together.
Amen.
As long as you're accountable, you're ethical, and you're learning, or even if you're like, I know for me, I'm very unbiased. Like I just like a very like blank canvas. But even if you're just being open-minded in your beliefs of being confident in who you are, but holding space for others' beliefs in a way that's not going to hurt somebody else, and there's room for everybody. There's thousands and what did you say? Gajillions?
But gajillions, I don't know. I'll make that up.
Of dead people on the other side. I would say that there's like 100,000 spirits for every medium.
Yeah, there's more than enough for everybody. So stay in your lane and just focus on you. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Watch other mediums, and if there's something that you like about another medium, know that you can do that too and put it on your wish list.
Yep.
If there's something that you don't like, you are building yourself as a medium and say, I don't like that, and I'm not going to do that, and building yourself as a medium. And you said something really nice about me, and I'm going to say something really nice about you. You were really helpful. No, you were really helpful in helping me get through my imposter syndrome. And I'm never going to not be done with that. Like, that's going to pop up again.
Yeah.
But you were very helpful to me in helping me surrender more and getting through that imposter syndrome cycle. So I appreciate you more than you will ever know, and I love you dearly. So
I love you too. Well, I mean, my next step is, if you didn't go over it, is you remember the show Dallas in the 80s? Where they just slap each other. I've always wanted to be like, get a hold of yourself. No, but really, it's like sometimes you need somebody to really kind of tell you the truth. Right? And I think that's what's beautiful about our friendship is we don't sugarcoat things. Like if there's something that needs to be said, it's done with love, but it's like we tell each other the truth. And I think we both give each other feedback. Don't you comment on this shirt.
No, you know what? But how do we always start something?
I love you.
I love you, but
yeah, you should wear a shirt during your readings.
That may have been a conversation we had.
That was a conversation when I was wearing a tank top. But you know what? It is what it is. But it's the truth. And it's the truth. And sometimes it's always humbling to hear it from a friend of being like, I love you, but this is what I'm seeing. And I think me and you will constantly give each other feedback on our readings. So that way we can understand of what the other one is seeing. It's great to have yourself and watch yourself back, but having somebody with fresh eyes being like, how did you get that information and how did that roll in? And then being like, oh, you're right, this is how I did, because maybe that's a question that they're trying to learn. So having dialogue around your development is really, really good. So please surround yourself with some awesome people.
I feel like we're very honest mirrors for each other. Like, I don't think we sugarcoat anything. I think we're just pains in the asses, if I'm honest. But with love. Because at the same time, like if you deliver a fire reading, I'm the first one to be like, that was fire. That was amazing. I love how you did this. And you do the same thing for me. But,
for sure.
you know, if there's like, hey, you know, you've called me out and you're like, why are you holding back? You've done that to me on a reading where you're like, you've reached out to me and after a reading, you're like, you held back on that reading. Why'd you do that?
I think now, like at the point in like my development and your development, we can actually see the information go in now. And I'm like, ooh, she just got something. Ooh, she holding it. Ooh, she need to give it. Ooh, it's gone. But it helps with our students, and I think that comes with teaching as well. Teaching development mediumship is when you can see that like disconnect, and sometimes somebody needs that like, hey, like I encourage you for your benefit to be a better medium. Is just say it. Like that's the easiest, hardest part of being a medium is saying all the wild shit you get.
Just say it. But
well, Dana,
I appreciate you, and and everybody. I love you too, and I love all of you guys, and we appreciate you so much for listening. And we hope that this was helpful. You know, just we understand and we appreciate as two working mediums that it's a challenging job to do this work and to be vulnerable, and you're not alone. I think more than anything, you know, we hope that we gave you some tips and tricks to like walk through this imposter syndrome, but we also want you to know that you're not alone as you walk this walk.
And we'd love to hear back from you. So, in this episode on YouTube, please go to our comments and tell us what your imposter syndrome would be in the comment section. And we will hopefully try to take some of that into consideration. And just, we love to hear your stories. So please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification on YouTube, go to this video, leave the comment of what your imposter syndrome is, because you will feel a lot better when you read other people's and being like, I've been there. I've been there. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So we love you all. You're in our hearts. Live your best life. Dana, take it away.
You're the light of 100,000 suns. You are the light. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Do something nice for somebody. Bye.